This is your host, Bruce Hutchin, welcoming you to another informative episode of Whitetail Rendezvous. This is Whitetail Rendezvous Podcast, episode number 321. On today's show, we welcome Jeremy Berlin. Jeremy's from Wisconsin, and he hunts down in Vernon County, and he's got a great story to tell you about a magnificent buck he was able to harvest this year, 2016. And the important thing is tips, techniques, strategies, and whitetail behavior is all in this show. If you take notes to any of my shows, this is a show that you want to take notes. So, welcome, Jeremy Berlin from Wisconsin. It's never too early to think about food plots. Whitetail Rendezvous has an ebook for you. Just simply text 33444 food plot to get your copy. Welcome to another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous. This is your host, Bruce Hutchin, and we're heading out to Augusta, Wisconsin. Now, folks, I graduated from the University of Wisconsin La Crosse, met a gal from Green Bay, and hunt Buffalo County every single time I can do it. I love hunting along the Buffalo River. And I connected with Jeremy Berlin on Facebook, and Jeremy's got a buck this year that it's a smoker. Jeremy, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to be on the show, and let's just jump right into that majestic high time buck. And I love high time bucks, and he's got width, mass, and brow tines that won't quit. So let's talk about your buck and the whole story, starting from when he got on your hit list to when you put him on the ground.
Well, it was October 19th, and I headed down to my lease in Vernon County, and a cold front just had moved in, which I love to hunt cold fronts, especially pre-rut. I went out, checked my cameras that morning, and I had a camera that was on a rub line that went across the property. There was probably 4 or 5 rubs when I went in there on the 19th, and I ended up having a picture of this deer, and I knew it was a deer that I wanted to kill. So I slipped in, I hung a stand on the north end of the property, and I decided just to leave it alone that night. The wind wasn't right, so I went and sat a different stand on the opposite side of the field. Saw a bunch of does, some little bucks chasing some does, nothing big. So on the morning of the 20th, I went and sat on the east side of the property, seeing a couple, decent-sized bucks, nothing I wanted to shoot. Well, I was walking up the field edge at about 10 o'clock, and I noticed that there was some other big rubs on the south end of the property that had just showed up that night. So I decided, well, there's a doe bedding area. I gotta hang a stand there. So I slipped in there, I hung a stand, I sat it that night, and I ended up seeing 2 small bucks, and I didn't see nothing. So I was like, I knew the buck was in the area. I just couldn't pinpoint exactly. I knew how he was traveling the area. I just didn't know when, because I only had one picture of him, and that was at 7-something in the morning. So on the 21st, the morning of the 21st, I got in early. I took the longest route that I can to my stand just so I wouldn't bump any deer out of that bedding area. There was a food plot down there. I knew there was deer in there. So it took me an hour and 15 minutes to walk to my stand. I was quiet. Had to go down a big gully. I walked up a little creek and snuck into my stand.
Let's take a break right now. And how far was that walk? If you just went straight line, if you just walked from your truck, to your stand, how far was that?
Probably maybe a 20-minute walk, if that.
Okay, folks, this is an important thing because Jeremy's really closing the gap. He knows he's there. Everything's setting up, but he did the thing that I'm going to say a bunch of us, I don't want to use percentages, don't do. Once you know something's happening, Mr. Wonderful's in the neighborhood, he did exactly what he should do. He took the longest route to get him to the stand, and he took his time. That's an important point, Jeremy, and well done. So continue on, please.
So I got in the stand, and I was sitting there, and it was still pretty dark out, and I was just sitting there. And about 7 o'clock, it was cold. It was frosty outside. About 7 o'clock, I had 5 does come right underneath my stand. They jumped the fence and went into the CRP field and went into their bedding area. So, I was kind of sitting there, and I was watching, and all of a sudden I just caught something out of the corner of my eye. This was probably about 7:45. And I looked up and I could see this large buck working that rub line that was on the south end of the property. He was winding that, the wind was blowing right in his face. He was winding that food plot. So he was about probably 175 yards away. And the only thing I could think about doing was rattling. So I grabbed my black rack, stuck my grunt call in my mouth. I started hitting the horns together, and he looked, and I rattled for about 30 seconds, and he was just staring at me. I knew he couldn't see me because I was pretty well hid due to the way the land lays down there. So I took 3 loud grunts, and I could tell that he was getting aggressive. He started shaking his head. I snort-wheezed at him. He went up to a pine tree, probably 5-inch pine tree, and just shredded it. So I said to myself, I have a chance at shooting this deer. The wind is right in my face. He can't smell me. And all of a sudden, he started walking right straight away from me. So I moved my slider on my grunt call to the estrus bleat, and I bleated once, and I didn't even get the call out of my mouth, and he had turned around, and he was running down the hill to me. So right then and there, panic set in. I'm like, well, I gotta range some stuff here because I don't know exactly where he's going to come. So I grabbed my bow and I started ranging random spots where I thought he might come. The furthest shot I had was 40 yards. So I figured, well, so I put my dial at 35 yards. He come up to the fence line where them does going, and he was just sniffing. He had his nose in the air, and he was doing whatever. I'm like, well, he's going to jump the fence. Well, he backed up, he backpedaled, and he stopped. And I started to shake. I'm like, what is he doing? I don't want to grunt. I don't want to let him know where I'm at. He's looking for these deer. So I just calmed down, took a deep breath, and he turned broadside, started walking right down this little hedgerow, and then he started working a scrape, and he's just working that scrape, and he's grunting and trying to find these other deer. Finally, I seen him take a step, and I drew my bow, and he stepped out, and he was at about 32 yards, and I let the arrow go, and I seen it disappear right behind his front shoulder. The deer jumped, and he stopped, and he looked around, and I'm like, are you kidding me? I know I hit him, and then he only went like 20 yards, and he tipped over, and that's when it all became reality, and I started shaking really bad. The thing about that was I kept my composure until after the shot, and once I seen him expire, that was when it really set in that I just harvested a magnificent whitetail, biggest deer I've ever harvested, and I can't thank God enough for what he gave me. He gave me a shot at that deer, and so I called the landowner and had him come down and help me retrieve the deer. Didn't really realize how big he was until we got up to him. When I got up to him, I fell to my knees. I couldn't believe it. I knew he was a 10-pointer, but I didn't think he was as big as he was. And I'm glad that I didn't know he was that big, because otherwise I might not have been able to pull it off.
Wow. It's a high time buck. And how old was he? What's his age class?
5.5 years old.
And well, we'll keep the score hidden for a little bit. I'm trying to think of how best to do that. So let's now go back up, because there's a lot of lessons learned in what you did on the thing. And I interrupted you to say the one thing that jumped out to me. You just took the long way around. Now, what did you have to do? You said you went down the gully. Talk to me about the terrain, and did you put your headlamp on? Just tell me, when you left the truck, what'd you do?
Well, when I left the truck, it was really moonlight out. I could see without a light, so I did not use my headlamp at all. The terrain is really hilly down there. It's right down. It's kind of like along that Mississippi River Valley. It's kind of like hunting Buffalo County. So where the stand was located was on the opposite ridge of where I was at. So what I did was I went all the way to the east side of the property to stay away from that where the deer were feeding. And there was an old logging road that goes down that I could walk down into the gully. And then there's like a little creek that runs up the gully all the way almost to my stand. So I went all the way down. I went down that logging road, and I just took my time. When I walk to a stand, I usually take 3 or 4 steps, and I stop, due to the fact that it kind of sounds like a deer. If you watch how a deer walks, a lot of times that's how I try to walk, try to sound like a deer. So I snuck down the gully, and then I snuck up into that water, using that water to my advantage, whether it was scent, it's quiet, and, with being in that valley and then deer are still out feeding, I didn't bump any deer. And that's an important thing for me as far as hanging stands is what I do. So then I just snuck up that ridge. It's pretty steep. It's pretty good grade. Like I said, I took my time, couple steps, stop, listen, couple steps, stop and listen. That way I knew I didn't scare any deer. Also, the wind was blowing in my face, so I knew that the wind wasn't blowing into that food plot or them grain fields, so them deer were not going to smell me or hear me.
Let's go back and what kind of setup did you have? Did you have a hanger or hang-on, or was it a climber?
I had a hang-on. I actually had an advanced tree stand that I had slipped into that the day before, obviously. I just told you I hung it. I slipped in there quiet. I knew there was doe was bedding there. It's been just a well-known doe bedding area, so I snuck as close as I could without spooking any deer that were bedded in there, hung the stand, and then hunted it that night because I thought maybe, I might catch a buck coming out of there because the cold front had just hit. But obviously that night I didn't see anything. We're shooting, but that's what I had hung was an advanced tree stand. They're so versatile as far as being able to slip in and hang the stem, and just the way that they're made is just phenomenal. You can get them so tight, they don't creak, they don't crack. By far the best tree stand I've ever used. And
how about your steps? Screw in or strap on?
Strap on. I used. I had big game. Steps, the sticks. They're a little loud for my liking, but, I've used them enough to know, I put rubber coating between them so that way they don't clink and clang when I'm hanging tree stand. Try to keep the noise to a minimum because I think that is a big factor in deer hearing you, smelling you, etc. People get so wrapped up in the whole scent regimen, which scent is a huge, huge thing, but also the noise when you go into hang a stand, especially, hanging a stand that you're going to hunt that night or the day before or the next day. You don't want to be out there making all sorts of noise. Them deer are used to hearing that ting, tang. I mean, especially an older buck. I mean, they know that sound. They know that they need to stay away.
Let's talk about scent. Do you put out like doe and estrus or any attractant? On your setup. Let's talk about that.
No, I personally don't use a lot of scents. I've never really had good luck with them. But at the same time, people have. There's times and places for it, I think. The reason why I don't use it is I find that I want that buck to not know that I'm there, not see me, smell me, even know I exist. And me putting scent out, yes, it might attract him, but sometimes if you don't do it right, you're going to let him know that you're there. And that's kind of where I'm at on that aspect of it. I mean, I've seen lots of success stories using scent and stuff, but like personally, I have never had any success using scents or attractant like, doe and estrus or buck urine or stuff like that. I just, I think that once a buck knows that there's does and estrus, they're going to be cruising. I got to use my other abilities to try to kill that deer.
How about scent clothing, rubber boots? What's your clothing and boot setup?
I wear lacrosse boots, rubber boots. I feel that they are great. They're well quality. I also wear scent blocker clothing with the base scent blocker base layers. I'm really, really, really adamant about scent control. That is one of the key things that I do religiously. I'm talking brush my teeth, take a shower, wipe down, spray my gear, all that. But now since, there's more modern technology, I have found really good luck with scent crusher products, the bag, the closet. On my lease down there, I took a closet down there, set it up in their shop, and that's where I put all my clothes at night, and I, clean them, put them all in there. They're ready for the next morning hunt. I can just get up, take a shower, do my scent regimen, get in my clothes, and go hunting.
So and you're sleeping right near your leash? You're not driving to it?
Nope. I drive from my house. It's about 2.5 hours. The landowner's got a big shop down there. We just kind of stay in there, and he lets us, throw cots up or whatever. It's heated and stuff like that. So that beats us, having to drive 2.5 hours every night, which is it's really nice of the landowner to do that.
Heck yeah. Please remember that the show is recorded where our guests happen to be at that time. That might be a tree stand, on the way to work, or sitting in a pickup on a ridge. Real people in real places. So sometimes the sound lacks sound room quality. So let's go back, and I know how big the buck is. How did you keep it together?
when he come down the hill, it happened really fast, and I think that was another reason why I held it together the way I did. But at the same time, I've shot a lot of nice deer, and over the years I've learned that I have to keep it together, because if I don't keep it together, there's a chance I could miss this deer. You always got to practice for that one opportunity, because you're only going to get one opportunity. And just like everybody else, I have messed up. Everybody does. It's hunting. We've all messed up. We've all made bad shots. It happens. But at the same time, the more you practice for that opportunity, the better off you are going to be in order to make that shot of a lifetime. The biggest thing for me, I find, to help me is when a deer is coming in and I know it's a shooter and I know I'm going to get a shot, I don't look at the horns. If I know it's a shooter, I don't look at the horns. I pick a spot behind that deer's shoulder. I'll pick the spot that I want to shoot, and I'll just follow that instead of looking at the horns. And I'll just concentrate on that instead of looking at the horns. A lot of people look at the horns and they get all riled up and get excited. That's not the way to go about it. That's when you're going to get buck fever, and you're not going to be able to make the shot. So that's my strategy as far as making stuff happen, is picking a spot and waiting for that perfect opportunity to hit that spot.
Let's talk about your shooting sequence. So you see the buck, he was 100 some yards away?
Yep.
And then you did a call sequence. Go ahead.
Yep. Yeah, he came down, like I said, I did a calling sequence. He came down the hill, and when he come up to the fence, I thought he was going to jump the fence. So I got ready. I didn't draw my bow yet, which I'm glad I didn't, because otherwise I would have had to let my bow down when he backpedaled. And when he backpedaled, he stopped there, and as he was coming, he stopped and worked that scrape. And as soon as I see him stop working that scrape and take a step toward the opening, I drew my bow. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking the other way. I had a perfect opportunity to draw my bow without him knowing I was there, and just wait for him. It probably took him 40 seconds to take another step, but I was full draw. I was ready, and I was concentrating on that spot. I had my pin on him right where I wanted to shoot him, and when he took that step, all I had to do was move my bow and let him have it.
Now, you said he was along a fence row going to jump the fence. Now, how high was the brush or the cover in that area? So, when he did back up, you didn't have a shot there. So talk to me about, where he was, physically, and if you had a shooting lane or not.
When he came and was going to jump the fence, I had a wide open shot, but he was at the wrong angle. He was facing me, and I didn't feel comfortable taking that much of an angle quartering toward me. I just didn't feel comfortable with the shot, so I was just reluctant to wait to see him give me a better shot, because if he would have jumped the fence, it would have been broadside. He would have been broadside to me. And just as it happened, if he backed up and walked it down the fence row, he would have been broadside to me as well, which is what happened. And the brush along that fence row is probably, I would say, 12 feet. There's a couple pines that were mixed in, some CRP grass. He felt safe over there. That's why I think he didn't jump the fence right away, because where he would have jumped the fence was actually into a pasture. They use that as a cruising zone. There's a little valley there. They can cruise from up on top to where he was down this edge, jump the fence, and go right down into the valley where I had come up to my stand. It's one of the things that we realized right away when we started scouting the property, that, hey, these bucks got to come down through here. Everything was tore up with rubs, etc.
So you found what I'd say, a hot zone, transition zone where he works the field, works the edge line, and then if he smells does, sees does, he jumps out of the edge cover into a pasture, but that drops down in the valley. Is that a correct statement? Yep.
Them big deer are only exposed for maybe 5 or 6 seconds once they jump that fence and they're down in the valley. And I think that is why he liked that area. He couldn't be seen from no roads, no fields, no nothing from where he was at. He had woods on both sides of him. He just had a strip that he was following, just using the wind to his advantage to search for does, and move along his rub line, his transition zone down to water or to wherever else he was headed.
And the bedding zone, how far away is that literally from your stand?
The bedding zone was actually probably about 100 yards from where my stand was. There's a, it's a CRP field. There's a bunch, it's a big hill. It's neck down by a river. And it's just really, really thick stuff. I mean, and we knew that there was does laying in there. We knew that there was bucks laying in there just by the camera pictures that we had of certain bucks in and out of there. We wouldn't have on the other side of the property, and they would always come out of that certain area. We knew there was deer staying in there. The landowner, when we talked to the landowner, he had verified that it was a bedding zone, and that, they have harvested a lot of deer during the gun season that have come out of there chasing does, etc. So we knew that it was a good area. We just didn't know how to set up on it until we had cameras out on it, seeing how the deer traveled the area at certain times, which, we figured that out right away, and the rest is history.
Now, you said he went to a scrape. Was he opening a new scrape, or was it a scrape he had used before and he was just leaving and, scent on a licky branch? Talk to me about the scrape.
When he come up to the scrape, I didn't even know it was there. I couldn't see it from my stand. The brush is pretty thick right there. He come up, and after the shot, when I went down there, it had been existing scrape. So it could have been his scrape or another buck scrape. We all know that multiple bucks use more than one scrape. But he was just depositing his scent. He didn't urinate in it or anything like that. He was just depositing his scent on the licking branch when he worked that scrape.
I just sit down and sitting here, I'm just wondering how many people can tell what you just told me and why it makes sense. You're a hell of a hunter, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, because, we get into bad habits. It's easy. I can tell you 100 times I'm 70 years old. So, literally it's way over 50 times I've come unglued, and then I just shut my eyes and breathe deep, open my eyes back up and finish the deal. But, it's so exciting to see a mature whitetail, mature elk. It doesn't matter what you're hunting, a goose setting his wings, web feet down, and it still gets me juiced. And I'm just thinking, how did this kid, and I'm assuming you're what, 28, 30?
27.
27. So, and you took a buck of a lifetime, but you understand the process. And that's what I wanted you to get out for the people. It's the whole process. And you read the sign. Like, do you think he opened up that new rub that night before?
By the size of the rubs that we found, I believe it was him. I mean, these were not little rubs. I mean, these were like the size of my thigh or bigger. I mean, and these trees were just shredded. And by looking at his broad tines and the way that they are, I mean, these grooves were really deep, and he had long brows, which kind of makes sense as far as well. And he had a lot of really, his bases were really knobby, really a good sign that it probably was him. I mean, he was obviously the mature deer in the area. Yes, we had other mature bucks in the area that were shooters, but obviously he was the kingpin. And spanning from the way the rub lines were located, as far as where I seen him, I'm almost 99% positive that it was him making those rubs, due to the fact that we had a picture of him on that same rub line, and just the nature of how I harvested the deer, him along that same area. Odds are it was him. I mean, yes, another deer could have made them, but just by his horn characteristics and the tree characteristics that we looked at, as far as the deep grooves and the really tall rubs. I mean, they were tall. I'm almost sure it was him.
One thing I'd like to go back to, when you saw him a distance away and you started your calling sequence and he got aggressive. Did he bristle up? Or tell me his body posture or behaviors that you read so well.
When I first seen him, he was relaxed. He had his nose in the air. He was just winding that food plot. And when I rattled, he didn't show no sign of getting aggressive. But when I grunted and snort wheezed, he bristled up. He started shaking his horns side to side, getting his neck muscles ready. That's when I figured I might have a chance at shooting this deer, because I had his attention. He thought there was other bucks in the area. And when he went up and shredded that tree, I knew that, like I said, I knew that I was going to get a shot until he started walking away, which I don't understand why he did what he did. but I obviously had to paint that illusion to him that there was 2 bucks down there fighting and they were aggressive. And then when I added that doe estrus bleed in there, it just set him over the edge. He couldn't handle it anymore. And then I think panic set in for him, thinking, oh, well, there's a hot doe down there. I need to get down there.
And October 20th, so he's in the seeking phase, correct?
Correct.
So, folks, we'll get to the score in a little bit, but everybody, sits the rut. I've done all-day sits, but more and more this year I heard a lot of people, and Garrett Schur took a 180 on our farm, and he took it the second day of the season, so that was September, 10th or 11th? I forget, now, but he took it on the Sunday morning of the opening of archery season, and he had patterned it. It was still in his summer pattern, and he just smoked it. And he took it early. That's a 180 class buck that he took after watching it all summer, snuck in, got where he wanted to be, and the deer did exactly what he thought he was going to do. And so don't set aside or don't miss some opportunities before the rut, because once the rut hits, it's chaos out there, and if you do everything right, you're going to see bucks. Now, if the wonderful comes by, I don't know, but I know you're going to see bucks. But if you're hunting them like Jeremy, and he had the trail cameras, he had the hit list, he knew exactly what, he put everything together so that he could close the deal on the magnificent buck. So everybody's listened to the show. We're coming up close to the soft time where you can give some shout outs. So let's talk about. We already talked about his age, and let's talk about his G1s and everything else.
Well, hold on one second. He had 18. He had an 18 and 1/8 inch spread. I mean, he looks a lot wider than what he was, but he is so massive that it adds a lot. Looks like he's really wide. His G1s, his broad tines were both 9 3/4. I mean, that's extraordinary for a whitetail. I mean, I'm surprised he didn't break them off fighting. A lot of whitetails that have long brows, you see, get snapped off during the fighting phase, during seeking phase. But his tallest tine was 12 7/8. And the smallest tine, it was a G2. And his smallest tine was his G4, had been on his left side, was 6 3/8. That kind of hurt me as far as net score, but I think nets are for fish, so that's
well said.
But he had just about 20 inches of mass on both sides. I mean, it's just an incredible deer. He had 9 1/8 inches of deductions total throughout the whole antlers. He was pretty symmetrical. Both beams were 26 3/8. I mean, he had really long beams. Just an extraordinary deer.
And the final tally was
193 and 2/8 gross.
And so, how does that stack up for Vernon County?
This buck is now the new Vernon County archery typical record. I don't know how it's going to rank as far as state. The tag tax or the Boone and Crockett score said something like number 12 or something for archery, which is still absolutely incredible, and it's a dream come true for me. Never in my lifetime would I thought I would harvest a deer of that caliber.
Well, all I can say is you're one blessed man, and I mean that with all sincerity. So we're at this time of the show, Jeremy. Give some shout-outs for 90 seconds or so, and then we'll wrap the show.
I just like to thank my wonderful fiance. I mean, she lets me hunt as much as I do and lets me pursue my passion of whitetail hunting. And I also want to thank Advanced Tree Stand for the quality products that they make. They make my method of hunting way easier than what it was 10 years ago. Also, I want to thank Scent Crusher for their products as far as keeping me scent free. I can't thank them enough for the products that they have come out with in order for hunters all around the world, as far as being able to revolutionize the way that we do our scent regimen. And I got to thank all my friends and family as well. I mean, they all contributed to this whitetail, and I got to thank my dad as well. I wouldn't be the hunter I would be today if it wasn't for him.
Well said.
Teaching me all that he's taught.
Yeah, well said. And we've got a lot of talk about, so I'm going to ask you if you would be a return guest, because I enjoyed listening to you and the way you dissected the whole event. As I said before, was extraordinary. So thank you for that.
Thank you. And of course, I'll be a return guest. I got lots more tactics I can share.
So on behalf of Whitetail Rendezvous listeners across North America, we have veterans globally that are in country listening to the show. Jeremy Berlin, just thank you for sharing some insights and giving people something to chew on and think about their strategies and how they're hunting mature bucks, because you get over a 4.5-year-old buck, he knows the drill, as you said, a clink here, a clang there. He knows exactly what's happening because he's no more than a quarter mile at most ever from you.
Exactly.
Ever from you. And that buck is there all the time, and you could go, years and never see him except for the trail cameras. Thank you.
Exactly.
And so we're going to wrap it up now. And again, Jeremy, thank you so much for being a guest.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. And thank you for everybody that listened to me.
Hey, folks, you're not going to want to miss the next episode of Whitetail Rendezvous. We're going to be visiting with William C. Hoffman, a.k.a. Bill Hoffman, but he goes by, his writing name is W.C. Hoffman. And he's coming out with a book called Loose Fletching. He's an author of Twins of Prey. He also has a podcast called Hoffman Hunting Heritage. And he writes about the outdoor experiences that he's had, his family had, in the outdoor tradition. Plus, he's a pretty good archer himself. He hunts multiple states. You're going to enjoy the show.
Thanks for joining us. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous, where you can listen and learn from the experts so you can be more successful on your next hunt. Until next time, listen, learn, and succeed.